I put my questions to Ms McGuinness first, and they're very distinct questions, so I would appreciate distinct responses. We have the context, Ms McGuinness, in your briefing document, so it really answers the questions I'm looking for. And in your opening statement, you talk about 3,820 inspections or investigations having taken place since March. How many of those were in meat plants?
If I may, I just mentioned as well in the opening statement, there's 34 mentioned there and 39. So they were a range of meat and food.
How many? I'm only looking for the number, please. How many? Is it 39?
39.
39, okay. And of those 39, how many, because you say in your opening statement, in the main authority inspections are unannounced and there are some pre-advised. So of those 39, how many were unannounced?
In the main, the ones that were related to the outbreaks in the 22 sites, a number of those were announced because we were involved.
For the number again, sorry, Ms McGuinness, of the 39, how many were announced and how many were unannounced?
It would have been roughly about 30 announced, but we have been, since then and the end of June, we've been going in unannounced to these. And I might say a number of the plants, as part of that NOCT, we've gone back in unannounced as well.
Okay, so of the 39, you're saying 30 were announced and only 9 were unannounced?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't take any comfort from that response. And in relation to those 39 visits and inspections, following then visits, we have a number of actions that can be taken. There's a report that can be published or submitted on the back of the investigation, but there's also what are called improvement notices and prohibition notices. Isn't that correct?
There's a range of different actions that an inspector can take when they visit a site,
Yep.
and I might remind you.
Improvement notices and prohibition notices are 2 of those actions, is that?
As well as a report of inspection.
Yes, that's what I said. And how many improvement notices were on foot of inspections in meat plants, and how many prohibition notices were on foot of inspections in meat plants?
If I may, I might give it to my colleague here on this one, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm only looking for the number, please.
In terms of improvement notices and prohibition notices, none have been served in the meat plants.
None, not one improvement notice, not one prohibition notice. And I don't know whether you heard SIB2 this morning and other unions. They talked about close proximity working, bottlenecks in canteens and toilets, noise pollution causing workers to shout, low wages which leads to causing carpooling and shared accommodation. In one town, Offaly, 40 migrant workers sharing rooms and accommodation. They talked about a hotbedding of workers. So we had 39 inspections, 30 of which were announced, and not one improvement notice and not one prohibition notice. And now we have 3 counties effectively in lockdown, or if you want to use a different term, more strict restrictions. That doesn't fill me with confidence at all. So when you say, Ms McGuinness, that we're going to have more unannounced visits, is that going to be the case? Because you were here before when we last met and all of these concerns were raised, and we called for unannounced visits, as did the Irish Congress of Trade Unions and other unions as well. So can we get a commitment from you today that that's now what will happen, that we will have unannounced as opposed to these announced visits?
The majority of our inspections will of course be unannounced, and as I said at the time, and I say again, the context of these particular initial inspections was part of a national outbreak control team led by Public Health, of which we were a party, and we were going in there to check against interim guidance, etc. We have made and will continue to make unannounced inspections in that sector.
But just it hasn't happened, so you can't tell me now. Well, you can, but you're, to try and paint the picture that the majority are unannounced or will be unannounced. So far, the vast majority were announced, and I put it to you already. All of those issues that were raised by the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, I won't go back over them again, of poor working conditions, of what was happening, of workers who had no sick pay, maybe going into work because of those circumstances, close proximity when they're in work, then sharing accommodation. None of that was picked up by any of your inspectors on the ground. Not one prohibition notice. I mean, I think people will find that to be very alarming and very concerning. And I hope that we're going to see a step change from the Health and Safety Authority going forward, because, quite frankly, it just isn't good enough. When the stakes are so high here in relation to the impact of this, when there's a cluster that leads to an outbreak that can lead to community transmission, when everybody is doing their absolute best to make sure that we can avoid these type of added restrictions, and yet the Health and Safety Authority, not a single prohibition notice, strikes me as, quite frankly, unbelievable.
If I may respond, I think the challenge here is health and safety deals. The Health and Safety Authority deals with health and safety. Many of the issues that have been raised by the Deputy are not within our remit, so we cannot address them in that regard. This is a public health matter. Public health determine the actions and responses in that sector and have been part of it and have been engaging with all parties.
Cramped conditions in the workplace are occupational health issues.
Thank you.
We will deal with them as occupational health issues, but in terms of labour and pay and conditions, that is not our remit. It's a different agency.